Hi out there, folks. This video is a little bit of a different video for me. This video is actually going to be kind of a reply to two people on the Reza forums that I've been having a bit of a discussion with. You know who you are, Dikra and Mark as well. This is going to be an unlisted video because this is this is beta content and it's on the Not For Media branch. So I will have this unlisted, so you'll only be able to see it on the forum in the Paddock Club. So what you guys were saying was a problem or a perceived problem with or just a characteristic of cars having too much oversteer at low speed and too much understeer at high speed. Particularly, the discussion started off with this car. Mark, you've asked me to try and do a bit more research and get back to you, so this is exactly why I'm doing this in video format, so you can sort of see what I've been doing. Dikra, you are asking me if I could actually if you could make a setup which would give you more oversteer at high speed in high speed corners and less oversteer in low speed corners. I'm gonna start by by the way, this is a reply to you two guys, but others of you out there might find this interesting and might find it useful to play with what I've done here. I will start by saying that I don't actually think there's a problem with low speed oversteer. I would expect any high-powered rear-wheel drive car to be able to swap ends at an extremely low speed, because the torque differential is going to absolutely overpower the balance of the car at speed and any aerodynamics, because at low speed you're hardly getting any aerodynamic influence at all. I will agree that it is very understeery at high speed, and I also find it strange because throughout Automobilista 2's development, one of the main complaints I've heard is that it's just generally too understeery, the default setups. I've heard that from a lot of people, and now people are saying, oh, there's too much oversteer at low speeds. And so this is kind of new for me. But anyway, I'm trying to kind of answer you guys now. I think one of you did say, could you see if this is a general problem with setup, or is a physics problem with many cars? I haven't had time to do many cars. I spent hours on this last night with this car, and I've spent definitely a couple of hours today retesting as well, so I haven't had time to try other cars at the moment. But I think there is quite a lot down to setups. A lot of people never play with the setups. I mean, R-Factor 2, for instance, people will complain about certain cars and the way they handle in that and not touch the setup. And some of the setups that come with that, they're totally not, well, totally not, they won't suit everyone's driving style, they won't suit every track. On that note, very important note, I've done this setup here to work. All of my testing has been done here at Goiânia, so I would suggest you test this setup on this track before you go testing it at others, because it may not work on other tracks. It should work in general, but it may not. And also, probably best if you use the same settings for your tracks that I've got here. Obviously, I'm using absolutely no artificial aids. I don't use those. It's full simulation. Normal tyre wear, normal fuel usages, and everything else. So I'm going to go in and try and show you what I've done, and then explain sort of why I've done things with the setup the way I have. I'm sorry if I'm waffling a bit here, guys. Also, you might find that this setup sort of, you might go, oh, this does what I want. I've got, at least I've got more high-speed oversteer. Or you might find it completely undrivable because it's, also there's me involved. I've set it up for my driving style. Your driving style just might not suit. There's so many variables. But anyway, what we're going to do first is we're going to set the car to default setups and try and identify the problem. So coming out of the pits immediately, if I turn to the right, stick it in first gear and floor it, there you go. you don't need much steering input to get the back end to come round. So that's quite oversteer already. But like I said, I would imagine any car, especially if I go full lock, to just be able to, you know, spin, you know, even on really sticky slicks. I would expect that. That's just the nature of the beast. It's got all the power. But anyway, we're going to have to try and ignore the first lap a bit, because obviously I've just really heated up those rear tyres, so that's going to provide an imbalance. Let's try and warm up the fronts, because obviously with the fronts being cold, it's going to exaggerate understeer. But using this track as a test bed, the high speed corner that I'm interested in is the one that I've just been round, the first corner, or the first double apex, so if you want to call it the first two corners you can. And then low speed corners are definitely corners like this, where if you come round and through the throttle, you really can get quite a lot of oversteer, as you can see there. But that's with flooring the throttle. I don't mind that oversteer, I just use a lot less accelerator and a lot of throttle control, and I find it'll go around fine. You've got other low speed corners here. Coming out of there, you can get a little bit of oversteer if you like. So with the tyres now warmed up a bit, still want to warm up those fronts a bit more, but hey ho. So to try and identify the problem, let's look at this first corner. I'm going to go into it because Dikra, I think you were interested in understeer at high speed after the apex and on the throttle. You're looking for on the throttle oversteer, or more of it, compared to what we have now, which is if I accelerate from the middle of the corner here, it's understeering to the outside of the track quite a bit. So yeah, I totally agree with you there. There's quite a lot of understeer there. So then coming out here, throttling it, and it's understeering. And that's a slightly slower corner, maybe a medium speed corner. But now we're going to get to our very low speed corner, and a little bit of understeer initially, and then I've put on so much throttle that I've been able to spin the back end round. Try not to stall the car there, Paul. So I'll do one more lap, and we'll see if we can get any oversteer at all out of that high speed corner, and then we're going to swap to the setup that I've been working on for you. And once again, I do apologise if I'm overdoing this video and putting in too much information, but I've sort of gone into this in high detail. And whilst we're on the straight, when you do try this setup of mine, please do try it exactly as all the parameters are set. Don't have a look at it and think, oh, these are a bit extreme, because I have done things to try and exaggerate certain things. Don't, before you try it, change a few things. Just try it as it is and tell me what you think. So, braking into the corner, a little bit too late maybe. On the throttle, out the corner, turning, and we're all the way to the outside of the track. And we'll just, lots of understeer there. Let's do this corner again. Braking, apex, throttle, and I can actually get a bit of oversteer there. Anyway, let's I'm going to change to my setup and show you how it drives, and then I'm going to try and explain the setup and why I've done some of the things that I've done and why I think it works, or you may disagree, you might not think it works, but you just try it. So I'm going to, where's my setup here? Load, right, so here we go. High speed, oversteer, low speed, understeer, final. So I'm going to swap to this setup. Now, what I'm going to say before I go out is what I've managed to get is a lot more high-speed oversteer, for you, which has made the car more oversteery in general at all speeds. But then what I actually like that setup. I've got a really fast time, it almost into the 126s around here with that setup, and I didn't mind the low-speed oversteer because I just used a lot less throttle on the low-speed corners. But with this setup, what I've done is I've taken, I've done all the stuff to make it more oversteery at high speed, but then I've slowed the setup down a little bit. Obviously, speed isn't important here because we're not doing a setup for qualify. It's not a qualifying setup. It's not a race setup. It is just a setup to get us more on throttle, high speed oversteer, and less on throttle after the apex low speed oversteer. So I've tried to. It's made it. We got a lot more high speed oversteer. And then I've tried to dial back the low speed oversteer a bit, and I've managed to do that, but not to the say. It's very hard to try and get a car to be oversteery and understeery at the same time, but at different speeds. Anyway, look, I'll show you. I'm waffling on. So if I turn to the right, as I did earlier, and throttle it. There we go. Immediately, it's not, you know, rotating straight away at low speed there. Obviously, you've probably already been able to identify that that must be a diff thing. You're right, but there's a lot more to this setup. Right, so let's get out there. And even though we're starting out in cold tyres, you should be able to notice it pretty immediately in this first corner. So braking at the 100-foot board, turning in and accelerating after the apex. Look at that. We're all the way onto the inside of the track. Loads more high-speed oversteer. So, and all the way around there, it's staying, and I'm not excessively overdriving the rear wheels, it's staying to the inside of the track. So around here, okay, quite a lot of throttle. It's going round and we're not getting excessive oversteer. But obviously the tyres haven't warmed up yet. So, another thing I'd say about this setup, watch this. See how it oversteered under braking there? This is not a setup for excessive trail braking. If you do what I did there, which was trail brake a bit too much, the back end will start to step out, and there's reasons for it. I'll explain after I've done a proper lap for you. Right. But hopefully, I hope you'll be pleased with this setup. I hope you do find that you at least get a lot more high-speed oversteer. And I'll say, through all of this testing, I'm really loving this car. So, right, here we go, racing speed. Braking at the 100 board. Braking a bit too late. Plenty of oversteer. Look, I'm steering to the inside of the track there. Once again, steering to the inside of the track. And let's deliberately try and overpower the back end a bit round this corner. So after the apex, steering it round. I've got to opposite lock a little bit, quite a bit, because I'm really trying to overdrive the back end, but it's not flicking around. And I've got my braking a little bit late there, so let's do a bit of excessive trail braking to turn it in. So obviously I'm doing things to over-exaggerate things that you're probably thinking, well, with those inputs. Anyway, that's enough of me waffling on. You probably want to know what I've done with the setup and just get straight to it. So I'll show you the setup, and you can just copy all of these settings down. Please copy them exactly, and then tell me what you think. So we're going to come back to the pit box, edit setup. So on your first page, pause the video here, and you can copy down these settings. You'll notice that the brake ducting is down by 20% here. Brake sensitivity is down by 10% here, and I've also gone 70-30 on the brake bias rather than the default, which I think is 64 to the front. Also, front tyre pressures you'll find are about 10 more than they are normally. They're the same as the rears on default, and they're up to 171, so up by 10. On the fronts, you can pause this page here. These are the suspension settings. And I'll explain those in a minute. Just pause and copy those down. And now I'm going to get the drivetrain, and there you go. You can pause and copy those down. So I'm now going to try and explain what I've done and why I've done it. I suppose suspension's a good place to start. To achieve more high-speed oversteer, I've made the little changes of things like the toe. There's absolutely no toe on the end, but that's only a 1 click's difference, so it doesn't make a hell of a lot of difference. But that's just going to give us a little less grip on the rear end. Anti-roll bar settings are quite important. I have changed the anti-roll bar settings on default. I think are about 5.7. I've gone 11.7 here. So we're much stiffer on the back end than we are on the front. But I haven't lowered the front ridiculously either, so it doesn't pitch and yaw too much. So that's going to give us more oversteer in general. I have taken out the bump stops completely, because that leads to bounce the car changing mid-corner. And also this car is not grounding out around this track at all, so it doesn't need bump stops. The suspension spring rates I've taken down to 1... both front and rear, just because this car seems to there's a few bumps on this track and it can lead to losing a bit of traction, so I've made it a little bit softer all round to keep speed up. Now the rear camber is as it is on default setup, because that's as low as it will go. I would have tried lowering it a little bit more, but I have upped the front camber by what is it? I think it's 3.3 at the front, negative camber. I've put it to 4.3. I found that gave me more oversteer at high speed, but actually a little bit less understeer at low speed. Cast is the same. Ride height, I've brought the rear down. I think it's 70 at the rear on default. I brought it down to 60 to help that rear have a little bit lower center of gravity at low speed, because obviously you're not relying on aerodynamics at low speed, so having a rear center of gravity would help lower rear center of gravity. Now these are quite important: slow bump and slow rebounds. So we've got the bounce of the car stiffer at the rear to the front with the anti-rolls. And then what I've done is I put, and this is quite an extreme setting, I put the slow rebound at the front right down to 1. Because obviously, if you're interested in more push oversteer whilst accelerating out of a high-speed corner, you know, the front end of the car is going to be lifting up and uncompressing, whereas the back end is going to be decompressing. So you do not want that. As soon as the front end starts to uncompress, that rebound is going to push back and give more stiffness to the front. You want the front to stay reasonably soft under acceleration, so that's why I've done that. And then at the rear, obviously the slow rebound, because of another thing that I've done with this setup, it became quite unstable under braking. The slow rebound, because we're not interested in corner entry slowing down oversteer, I've had to bring that right down, so when you hit the brakes and the weight shift to the front, the back end the rebound doesn't push back and you know, you lose the back end. Because, and this is one of the main reasons we've got so much more oversteer at high speed, I've done that to compensate the fact that we have got one click of rear downforce. That was really quite a simple thing. Take off that rear downforce and it allows us a lot less understeer in the high speed corners, because obviously in the high speed corners we're relying a lot more on aerodynamics, and also because that was making the rear end a little bit more destable, which is what I've done with the suspension that I've done. So under braking, I've also moved the brake bias forward a bit, just a bit, only about 4 clicks. And also, to gain a little bit of speed back, I was able to, because there's more heat being generated by the fronts than the rears, to help balance that out, I've been able to lower the back ducting to give us a little bit more aerodynamic, less drag, and still keep reasonable brake temperatures at the rear. And now, drivetrain. So what I've done here is, because the car's now generally so oversteery, in those low, you know, you don't need a lot of differential to make it oversteer, it just will. But obviously in the low speed corners that could be a problem, so I've taken the power ramp from 50 up to 75, so a lot less locking. So you know, if you overdrive the rear going around that very sharp corner, it's at low speed it should understeer a little bit less. And coast ramp, also to help with that unstableness under braking, I've taken all the way up to 25. Clutches remain the same, and the preload, just to help with the transition between, because it's such an extreme transition between the power ramp and coast ramp, I brought up to 150. You don't want to do it too much because you know you're going to induce understeer, but the car is now, in balance-wise, without taking the differential into account, it doesn't matter because it's so oversteery. I've been able to bring the preload up, which has made the car then more stable under braking. Those are the settings. Sorry if I've waffled on a bit, and if you're not too bored, you can go up and try that now. But if you're not bored, I'm gonna do a couple of hot laps just to display this setup's characteristics a bit more. But yeah, I don't know if this is going to work for you guys or not. As in Mark and Dick were there. For anyone else that's just watched this video because, you know, for the hell of it, tell me what you think in the comments on the. If you can tell me in the comments on the video and on the forums. I'm going to put this in the physics thread. Rather than the beta thread at the request of Koayanda, because it's more physics based than discussing the changelog. But certainly Mark and Dikra, let me know what you think. I mean, like I said, you might get in this car. Obviously, you're going to have to change your driving style to drive it like this a bit. Because you might get in the car, and I've totally screwed that corner up, haven't I? You might get in the car and find it undrivable because it's such a big change from the default setup. But also, you might find it undrivable just because you don't get on with my driving style, and obviously I'm the only person that's tested this setup, so you might totally hate it. But I am definitely finding that I've got a heck of a lot more oversteer at high speed, and I'm just going to go quiet for this corner. I need to concentrate. I can use so much more power going around that corner without being all the way out onto the green stuff there. It's just so much more oversteer. Like I said, I've managed to make it more stable under braking, but do be careful under braking. It is not massively great for trail braking. And obviously, with this corner here, you should be able to use a reasonable amount of throttle, but obviously if you do floor it, it is still a high-powered car. You still could spin it if you floor the throttle. Well, yeah, I'm loving this car after all this mucking about with setups. I do like mucking about with setups. Not that I'm a setup expert in any way at all. I've just tried to sort of follow the brief, if you like, that I've been given. But generally, I'm enjoying this. But if I had my way, I've got another setup where I did all of the oversteer stuff and didn't bother with trying to tame the low speed understeer, and that setup I was really enjoying. But I don't think you'd get on with that because it still leaves you with a lot of low speed understeer. But like I said, I was getting near 126s with that setup. This setup I'm more sort of in the 128s. Similar story with the default setup. It just drives quite a bit differently. Oh yeah, there we go, 128.7 on the last lap there. You can carry quite a lot of speed through the corners with this setup. And if I don't screw up this last corner, it looks like we're going to get an even faster time. Bad exit, could have backed up the throttle just a little bit there and then straight back on, but we are going to get a better time. 128.475. So there we go. Mark, Dickra, I hope that's been useful. I may have completely missed the point of all of this. I don't know. I'm just trying to help. And for anyone else, by the way, if anyone else, just before I finish, if anyone else wants to try my really fast setup, which is incredibly oversteery and does nothing to try and counteract the low speed oversteer, which I don't mind, this is that one, so you can copy this, right, this one here, so there you go, you can copy that down, and you can copy the suspension page down. You'll notice things like camber are slightly different, and there's some slightly different suspension settings as well. And this is your, you'll notice that the diff settings are quite a bit different as well. I haven't lowered the power amp. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching. Happy sim racing.